My parents skipped my husband's funeral for my sister's party, then demanded $1 million from me, but my final move turned their greed into their downfall. I'm Emery Walsh, 34 years old, living in a small town near Flagstaff, Arizona. And last Tuesday, my world collapsed. My husband Ben died suddenly from a massive heart attack during a client meeting. No warning signs, no goodbye, just a phone call at 10:32 a.m. from his assistant. And from that moment, I was no longer myself. I remember collapsing beside the kitchen counter, the phone slipping from my hand, the tone still beeping into silence. My daughter's glass of milk was still on the table. The napkin Ben used at breakfast lay beside the plate of waffles he made for her. Everything was still there except him. I met Ben when I was 21 during our time at Northern Arizona University. I was a quiet junior in the psychology program, withdrawn after a childhood filled with emotional fractures. Ben, a senior studying industrial design, was the opposite. He had a smile that disarmed and eyes that seemed to spot the silver lining in every storm. We met when I spilled a full glass of iced tea on my laptop in the library. Ben, sitting one row away, rushed over to help me clean up the soggy papers and pulled a screen cloth from his backpack. Good thing it's not coffee, light tea might still have a chance. I remember laughing, a rare reaction during that 10th semester. After that, he often happened to be in the library, asked a few questions, and slowly, without us even realizing, we spent that whole winter together. Group studies, burrito afternoons under the soft sunlight outside the Arts and Design building. Ben never rushed, never made promises. But one thing was clear. He saw me not as the girl who frowned, but as someone worthy of patient love. He proposed at my graduation ceremony to the shock of my friends. He hid the ring in an old Carl Jung book I adored. A small detail but classic Ben. We married when I was 24 in a small backyard ceremony at his parents' house in Sedona. Back then we had little. Ben had just started his first job at a startup that made assistive devices for the elderly. I worked part-time at a counseling center while studying for my certification. Our first 3 years weren't easy. I miscarried twice, once at 10 weeks, then at 16. Each time left a void no words could fill. I blamed myself, shut down. But Ben never let me drift. He printed the ultrasound photos, framed them above our bed, and said, "Our baby came and lived a part of their life inside us. It was short, but it deserves to be remembered, not hidden." He took me to every therapy session, waited silently in the car for hours. He never told me to move on, just held my hand every time I felt like shattering. Then one morning, late April, when I was 29, I found out I was pregnant with Harper. This time, Ben didn't jump with excitement like before. He just smiled softly and hugged me for a long time, like holding something beyond precious. Harper was born on Ben's birthday. He wept like a child hearing her first cry, held her close and whispered, "Welcome to Daddy's world." For 8 years, he never missed a parent-teacher meeting, baseball game, or art contest. Every Sunday, he made bunny or superhero pancakes, exactly as Harper asked. To Ben, fatherhood wasn't a duty, it was a gift. He always put family first. When the company offered him a position at their New York headquarters with twice the salary, he asked one question: would Harper still get to ride her bike at the park down the street? And when I said no, he turned it down. I used to think I was the luckiest woman alive, but the cost of deep love is losing a piece of your soul when it's gone. Ben's death hit like a lightning bolt, shattering everything I thought was steady. After his assistant's call, I rushed to the hospital like someone possessed, asking our neighbor Melissa to pick up Harper from school. I arrived at 11:18 a.m. 5 minutes later, the doctor told me they did all they could, but nothing could be done. Ben passed at 10:57. A heart attack took him in under 10 minutes. I remember screaming, "No, it can't be," and collapsing onto the cold, white hallway floor. My soul felt ripped out. The man who promised to stay with me forever had kept that promise just far too soon. I didn't cry right then. My emotions went numb like my body no longer belonged to me. I stood frozen, staring at the closed emergency room doors, where the only person who ever loved me unconditionally had just vanished. It took an hour to complete the initial paperwork, another hour to gather the strength to call my parents. My dad picked up, cheerful sounds in the background. "Hey, Emery, perfect timing. Your mom just brought out Clara's birthday cake. We just finished singing. I had to breathe several times to get the words out. Dad, Ben's gone this morning, heart attack. I just got back from the hospital." Silence. Then my mom cut in, annoyed. "Why would you call now? You know it's Clara's 40th birthday." I nearly yelled. "I just lost my husband. Do you get that? I'm alone. Harper doesn't even know yet." My mother replied without hesitation. Emery, I know you're upset, but everyone's here. Can you call again in the morning? I hung up with trembling hands. They didn't ask if I was okay. No one asked about Harper. No, I'm coming right over. Just, we're busy with the party. Call tomorrow. And silence. That night, I had to tell my daughter her father was never coming home again. Harper sat in the back seat, clutching the teddy bear Ben gave her for her 7th birthday. Mommy, why didn't Daddy pick me up today? Sweetheart, I pulled over, hands shaking, unable to drive any farther. I turned around and looked my daughter in the eye. Daddy had a really bad heart attack at work today. The doctors tried, but they couldn't save him. She blinked, lips pressed together, as if waiting for a softer version of the truth. He's not coming home, is he, Mom? All I could do was nod, my lips sealed to keep the sob inside. Harper screamed, a raw cry shaped only by pure despair. She threw herself into my arms, sobbing with such force it felt like every blood vessel in my chest might burst. I want Daddy. I need him. Why did he leave without saying goodbye? I had no answer. I just held her, letting us both drown in the pain, surrounded by darkness inside the parked car. 3 full days passed. My parents never showed up. I made the obituary list on my own, contacted the funeral home, chose the photo for the memorial table. It wasn't until the 4th day that I got the first message from my dad. Did Ben leave a life insurance policy? You should call the company, soon. I couldn't believe it. No condolences, no asking what suit he'd be buried in. Just that. I took a screenshot of the message and replied with one sentence. For the first time in my life, I regret not setting boundaries with you sooner. Ben's funeral was held on a gloomy Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after he passed. In Flagstaff, a light drizzle trailed down the stained glass windows of the wooden church where I used to imagine witnessing milestones of joy, not farewells. Harper and I arrived an hour early. She wore a navy blue dress, Ben's favorite color, with her hair tied to the side, the way he used to do it for special occasions. Before we walked in, she handed me a dried sprig of lavender. It's Daddy's favorite smell, right, Mom? I nodded, swallowing my tears. Ben's family was already there. His parents, Albert and Marianne, stood at the church doors, welcoming guests with weary but kind eyes. Albert didn't say a word. He just hugged me tight. Marianne bent down and hugged Harper, voice trembling. I'm here for you, sweetheart, always will be. Ben's sister Josie flew in from Denver overnight carrying a tin of homemade cookies. He always said, if something awful ever happened, bake something sweet. It's his way of reminding us he's still here. I broke down crying right then. Every member of Ben's family helped ease the void with small, loving acts. They asked about Harper, helped arrange flowers, guided guests kindly. Not a single word about paperwork or insurance, just love. My family was different. 15 minutes before the service, I received a message from my mom, stuck in traffic, trying to get there as fast as we can. They finally arrived near the end of the eulogy. My parents, my sister Clara, and her husband. No apologies. Mom whispered loudly as she sat down, reeking of perfume. Clara spent over an hour picking out that beige top. Thank God we weren't too late. I looked over at Harper sitting beside her cousin, still clutching the lavender sprig like it was a lifeline. She tried to stay strong, but I saw her tiny shoulders quiver. My father stood in the back, not shedding a tear, but he did whisper to my Uncle Mike, his older brother, while standing near the memorial table. Ben had a great salary at that company. That life insurance payout must be huge. Emery will be fine. Uncle Mike glanced at me, then turned away awkwardly. Even while I signed the guest book, I heard every word, cutting deep. I no longer recognized them, not because they were careless, but because they didn't care. Their presence felt more like an obligation than support. When I gave my farewell speech, my voice cracked over and over. I talked about the man who folded napkins into swans for Harper every night, who burnt batch after batch of cookies until he perfected the one she liked best. I shared how just a week before his death, he'd made plans for a Grand Canyon trip simply because Harper said she wanted to see real shooting stars. I didn't look at my family. I was too afraid their blank expressions would make me collapse. After the ceremony, we held a small reception at home. Ben's family jumped in to help organize, welcome guests, and clean up. Marianne never left Harper's side, making sure she ate something real and wasn't just pretending to be okay. My family, they sat in a corner eating pastries, chatting with relatives like it was a casual Sunday brunch. I overheard my mom sighing to my aunt. Emery has always been overly sensitive. She's young. She'll get over it. At dusk, I saw my dad step onto the back patio and speak quietly to Uncle Mike. If Emery is smart, she'll invest that insurance money. No need to waste it on emotional nonsense. I stood behind the glass door, frozen. But inside me, something slammed shut. 2 weeks after the funeral, just as I had taken down the last wreath from our porch railing and started to remember how to breathe normally again, my parents showed up unexpectedly. I was making tea in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw my father adjusting the collar of his polo shirt and my mother checking her reflection in the car window as if she were heading to a luncheon, not the home of her recently widowed daughter. I opened the door, keeping my face composed, even as something inside me went cold. "Oh, Emery, you didn't say you had plans today," my mother said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Is Harper home? Good, then we can talk privately." They sat down on the sofa like it was still their old house, their eyes scanning the room, assessing every piece of furniture. My father clucked his tongue when he saw the new speakers Ben had installed less than a month before he died. I placed 2 cups of tea on the table, suppressing a sigh. "Is there something you needed?" My father cleared his throat and set his teacup neatly onto the oak coaster. "We wanted to talk a little about your financial situation." I frowned. "What about it?" My mother adjusted her scarf. "We know Ben had a life insurance policy. The payout isn't small. And you? Well, you're still young. Harper has a long road ahead." So, my father picked up where she left off, his voice low, as if he were stating something perfectly reasonable. "We think sharing some of it with the family would be fair. Specifically, 50% to us, and if you're comfortable, another 15% for Clara. She's struggling right now." I set my cup down carefully, my hands trembling. "Are you serious?" "Of course," my mother said as if I had asked something ridiculous. "We raised you for 18 years, paid for your college, helped with your first house deposit. That was an investment. Now it's time to give back." I stared at the 2 people I had once leaned on, or at least thought I could. "Ben hasn't even been gone long, and you're here to talk about money." My father cleared his throat again. "Don't be dramatic. This is practical thinking. That money, if used wisely, could benefit the whole family. Clara is barely keeping her new art studio afloat. And your mother is going to need knee surgery. These are valid needs. What need is more valid than Harper losing her dad?" I blurted out, my voice rising. "She's only 8 and you're treating the insurance payout like a winning lottery ticket." My mother crossed her arms, clearly annoyed. "There's no need to be disrespectful. You're always too emotional. Can't you just share with your family?" "Share?" I almost laughed. "When I needed support, where were you when I told you Ben died? What did you say again? Call back tomorrow. And now you're here to claim a cut like this is some kind of transaction." My father stood, shaking his head. "If you don't want to help, just say so. Don't place blame, but don't forget who made it possible for you to be where you are today." I stood up too. "Made it possible? You mean the mother who showed up to the funeral reeking of perfume and asked if I planned to wear black or something less depressing? Or the father who whispered to Uncle Mike that the insurance must be decent before Ben's ashes even cooled?" Silence. My mother reached down for her purse, my father's face turning red. Just before walking out, he looked back at me. "We'll revisit this when you're more level-headed. And remember, when people look at you, they see the family's reputation too." I shut the door before I could answer. As it slammed, I leaned against it, trembling. One thought echoed in my mind. They didn't come to comfort me. They came to claim their share. Even after they left, I stood frozen behind that door, fists clenched white. I couldn't understand how I'd kept my composure. Maybe I was too shocked, or maybe deep down, I had still hoped they had come to mourn, not to negotiate. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway. Harper stood at the top of the stairs in her fox print pajamas, clutching her worn stuffed bear, her face pale. "Mom, why did Grandma and Grandpa come?" I walked over and knelt to her eye level. "They just came to talk, sweetheart. Why aren't you asleep?" She bit her lip. "They want Dad's money, don't they?" I frowned. "You heard something?" Harper nodded. "I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I went to get a water bottle in the kitchen. I heard Grandpa say, 'Split the money.' And then you yelled." A heavy silence fell between us. I placed my hand on her shoulder, my voice steady. "That's true. They said things they shouldn't have at a time they really shouldn't have. But I won't let anyone take what your dad left for you." "No one. You understand?" Harper lowered her head. "Dad worked all night. Some nights he slept on the couch just to finish a design. That money's for you and me, right?" I nodded, barely believing this child was only 8. "Your dad took care of us until his last breath. I'll do the same. I promise." The next morning, I emailed Thomas, Ben's attorney and college friend. I laid everything out and asked him to review every document tied to the insurance and the will. By early afternoon, he called back. "I understand your concern." His voice was calm and steady. "But you can rest assured all the documents were properly signed and notarized by Ben. Everything is legal and clear. You are the sole beneficiary of all the insurance policies and investment accounts. Your parents have no rights, neither legally nor morally." I exhaled, feeling some weight lift off my chest. But just a few minutes later, my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. "We need to have a proper conversation. You're escalating things unnecessarily." Then one from my sister Clara. "I didn't think you'd be this selfish. Not everyone's lucky enough to inherit hundreds of thousands." I stared at the screen, my hands icy. These were the people who once knew how my tears tasted. And now they talked as if I'd hit the jackpot. That evening, I printed every message document and wrote down a detailed note of yesterday's encounter. I didn't know how far this would go, but I was no longer the woman who stayed quiet to keep the peace. Harper was at her desk coloring while I sat in the living room carefully assembling the file page by page, word by word. When she came out, I thought she'd ask for candy or invite me to play chess, but she just said, "You don't need to be scared, Mom. Dad always told me, if you see something wrong, stand tall and say no, even to grown-ups." I pulled her into my arms, tears falling into her hair. "You're growing up faster than I want, but I'm proud you know what's right." The next morning, I sent a brief message to my parents and Clara. "I'm not sharing the life insurance, not out of selfishness, but because I respect my husband and my daughter. If anyone in this family continues to pressure me, I will involve legal counsel. This is the last time I will address this matter." Then I turned off my phone. I no longer felt like the daughter who always nodded and accepted. I was a mother, a wife, and I knew what I had to protect. 3 days after the confrontation, I decided to do something I hadn't had the courage for since Ben's death. Open the file cabinet in his home office. Since he passed, the room felt sealed by memory. Everything remained untouched. The swivel chair with a scratch on the armrest, the crackled teal ceramic mug resting neatly on its coaster, the drawer that stuck slightly on the left. I hadn't touched a thing. But today, I needed to review every document tied to the insurance and investment funds. Not to defend myself, but to defend us. I opened the bottom drawer where Ben kept personal files. Between thick folders, I saw a pale yellow envelope sealed with a familiar line written on the outside. "For Emery, open only if truly necessary." My hand froze. I recognized Ben's handwriting immediately, tilted left, slightly hurried as if each letter was rushing to reach me. I sat on the floor as golden late afternoon light filtered through the blinds. My hands trembled as I tore open the flap. Inside was a handwritten letter nearly 3 pages long, written in blue ink, every line carefully formed. "My dearest Emery, if you're reading this, it means the worst has happened. I'm sorry I didn't explain more while I had time, but you know me, I am terrible at facing the worst-case scenario. 6 months ago, during a routine checkup, the doctor said I had early signs of a heart issue. Nothing urgent, but enough to make me think ahead. That night, after Harper went to sleep, I sat down and finalized our financial plan. My vision blurred. You don't have to worry. Everything has been arranged. The will and all assets go directly to you and Harper. I also created a separate fund, Harper Education and Life Fund, locked until she turns 25. It's strictly for education and medical care. Most important of all, that fund is accessible only by you." The next line made me stop breathing. "You know, your father once tried to pitch business ideas to me. One about out-of-state real estate, another about opening a craft studio for Clara. I politely declined, but he might assume that after I'm gone you'll feel pressured." I clenched the letter. I wasn't the only one who saw it coming. Ben had too and quietly built a wall before the storm hit. I didn't leave money to be fought over. I left it so you and Harper could stand strong, independent, never forced to choose between gratitude and safety. I'm sorry I couldn't say this in person, but if anyone pressures you, show this letter to Thomas. I've already spoken to him. My chest tightened. Every word from Ben felt like an embrace from afar. Grief-soaked, but steadying. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Thomas with a short message. "I found this. Hope we won't need it, but did you know what my dad once pitched to Ben?" Thomas called back immediately. "I know. Ben told me everything in detail. And just like the letter said, all the documents have been stamped, certified, and officially filed. Even if your parents hire an attorney, they have no legal standing. I'll be right behind you if they keep pushing." I nodded slightly, even though he couldn't see me. Thank you, Thomas, not just for protecting the assets, but for protecting what Ben entrusted to me. The following Sunday, my parents sent a message saying they wanted to resolve all misunderstandings in a civilized manner and invited me to their house, emphasizing, "The whole family will be there. We hope you'll be mature and reasonable." I wasn't going to go, but Harper, after hearing what I told her, gently placed her hand over mine and said, "I want to go. I have something to say." I was surprised. "What do you mean?" She pulled out a cream-colored envelope she had hidden in her desk for days. "I've already prepared it. It's what Dad would have done if he were still here." On the way to my parents' house, Harper sat beside me, eyes watching the rows of pine trees outside, holding the envelope so tightly her hands left creases on it. The air inside the car was taut like a stretched string. When we arrived, the driveway was already full. I recognized Aunt Lisa's car, Uncle Paul's, and even Uncle Elliot's. People who rarely showed up unless it was a holiday. My family called them social proof. With witnesses present, saying no becomes harder. My mother opened the door wearing a burgundy velvet dress, lipstick bold red, her face stiff but forcing a smile. "Hello, girls. Everyone's waiting in the living room." As I stepped into the house I once called a safe place, it now felt like walking into a trap. My father was seated in the middle of the long couch with Clara, my younger sister, beside him, swirling her wine glass. Family members lined either side, their expressions stern, like they were attending a board meeting. My father spoke first in his classic family leader tone. "Thank you for coming. We want to resolve this financial matter like adults. No one wants lawsuits or tension." I stayed standing. So did Harper, still clutching the envelope. I spoke plainly. "If this is a meeting to pressure me into sharing Ben's life insurance, then let me be clear." "No." There was a murmur in the room. My mother's voice trembled with emotion. "Emery, you can't be this selfish. We raised you, paid for your college, helped with your first home. Clara is drowning in debt. Can't you be a little generous?" Ben worked himself to the bone to take care of me and our daughter. He's gone. And that money is for Harper's future. No one has any right to it. Not my parents, not anyone. Clara let out a bitter laugh. "Oh, but when it came time for a house down payment, you didn't say no, did you? Or when planning your wedding? Who helped out then?" I didn't respond. My mother continued, "Everything you have is because of this family, and now you turn your back. You think love is enough to live on. Even love needs some give and take." That's when Harper stepped forward. She pulled a neatly folded paper from the envelope and held it up. "If we're going to talk about giving and receiving, then this is my record." She spoke clearly, more mature than her age. "I call this the emotional invoice. Mom said the life insurance is because Dad loved us, not anyone else." She unfolded the paper and began to read the emotional invoice. "Hugged Mom when she cried. Zero not provided. Asked me how I felt after losing Dad. Zero not provided. Stayed with us on our first night without Dad. Zero not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless but never happened. Total due zero." No one said a word. My father's face turned red, and my mother trembled as she set her glass down, the clink loud in the silence. Harper folded the paper and spoke firmly. "Dad used to say, people shouldn't come to you only when they want something. If you're here for love, I'm open. But if you're here for money, then this is what you've actually earned from us." I walked over and placed my hand on my daughter's shoulder. "Can we leave now?" On the way home, Harper fell asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window, still clutching her emotional invoice, a small but powerful symbol of the dignity she had just protected. That night, I sent one final message to my parents and sister. "Starting today, Harper and I will not accept any contact from the family unless it comes from genuine remorse and has no financial motive. Any further pressure or legal threats will be referred directly to our attorney." Then I blocked all their numbers without a second thought. But the silence didn't last. Just 2 days later, I began receiving messages from unknown numbers. "You can't be this cruel to your own parents. Only Emery would act like she's the victim, and if you don't handle this, we'll be forced to take legal action." I realized they were now asking relatives, even my old classmates, to text and call me, trying to stir guilt over a family torn apart by money. One Tuesday morning, while I was pouring milk for Harper's breakfast, the doorbell rang. I looked through the gate camera, a man in a suit holding an envelope. I opened the gate slightly. "I'm a representative from Riley and Associates. Mr. Fred Miller and Mrs. Carol Miller have issued a notice requesting the adjustment of the estate in accordance with verbal agreements and family tradition." I looked at him for a second and said briefly, "They have no right. I have a lawyer." I'm just delivering the documents, he replied, handing me the envelope before walking away. I called Thomas right away. They sent something through a lawyer. They want to adjust the estate. Thomas gave a dry laugh on the phone. Just a stunt. The will and all the accounts were executed in the state of Arizona according to current law. Verbal agreements carry no weight, but if they keep bothering you, I'll issue a cease and desist letter with a formal legal warning. That afternoon, Thomas sent me a draft of the official letter, and within 3 days my family went silent again. Not because they gave up on greed, but because they were warned. Meanwhile, the people I once felt uneasy around were the very ones pulling me out of the darkness. Mary Ann, my mother-in-law, called every night, checking in on Harper, sending little books or bags of homemade cookies. Albert, my father-in-law, even offered to help Harper with advanced math homework, though he never quite understood modern teaching methods. Josie, Ben's sister, came over for 2 days, bringing a small memory box Ben had left at her place, old photos, a ticket stub from our first movie date, and a letter Ben had written to Harper when she was barely 3. My neighbor, Mrs. Winslow, a widow living next door, brought over a basket of peaches and said, "I've been through something like this. No one should have to smile through pain alone. If you ever need a quiet spot, I've got a porch swing out back. I make tea every day at 5 p.m. I began to realize family isn't about obligation or endurance. It's about being yourself and still being respected. I don't know if there's a way back for me and my parents. But right now, all I want is for Harper to have a childhood free of the shadows I once carried, and for Ben's promise to stay true, that no one would ever shape our lives with strings called family obligations." One March afternoon, I was called into the principal's office at Harper's school. On the desk, Mr. Taylor, the principal, laid out a simple incident report. Documentation of event. Mrs. Carol Miller attempted to approach student Harper Whitman at the school gate without prior notice to the legal guardian. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, trying to stay calm. "She didn't do anything dangerous," Mr. Taylor said gently, "just asked her a few questions," but Harper refused to engage and went straight inside. I nodded. "Thank you for following proper protocol." On the way home, Harper looked at me through the rearview mirror and asked, "Mom, I don't have to see them if I don't want to, right?" I squeezed her hand and smiled. "That's right. No one can force you, not even me." 3 days later, I got a call from Aunt Laura, my mom's sister. She sighed. "Emery, if I told you I believe you were right, would you believe me?" I didn't answer right away, she continued. "I used to think you were cold to the family, but after hearing how they talked about reclaiming their parenting investment, I realized I was wrong. You're not selfish. You're doing what's right." Gradually, those who stayed silent began to speak up. Aunt Nora sent an email to apologize. Uncle Gary, my dad's brother, came to my shop with a small bouquet and a card. "Ben was a wonderful man, and Harper is too. You both deserve to be protected." 3 months later, a handwritten envelope arrived at my house. No return address, just a familiar handwriting to Emery and Harper. "I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just hope for a chance to say something honest. When your father said reclaim what's rightfully ours, I agreed. I thought money would heal the pain of loss, but I was wrong. I pushed my daughter away and nearly lost my only grandchild. I don't want compensation. I just want to see Harper smile just once, even for 5 minutes at a public park. You can bring someone with you, you can end at any time. I won't mention money, I just want to be called Grandma, even if just once and never again." I folded the letter. I didn't know why my hands were shaking. Maybe it was because, for once, she didn't sound defensive. I forwarded the letter to Thomas with a note. I agree to let my parents see Harper for 15 minutes at Hillstone Tea Lounge, a public place with me and my lawyer present. If they mention money or make Harper uncomfortable, the meeting ends immediately. At Hillstone, we sat in a quiet corner by the window. My parents arrived on time. They brought nothing but my mother's old leather bag and a slightly awkward expression. Harper looked at them. She didn't run over, but she didn't turn away. She simply nodded. "Hello." My mother sat down, her eyes on Harper for a long time. She didn't speak at first, then gently. "I used to think I was right, but now I just want you to know. I miss you." Harper said nothing. Then suddenly she pulled a drawing from her backpack. A wooden bridge stretched across a river. On the left it said past. On the right, future. In the middle, a faint pencil line read, "Bridges can be rebuilt, but not for free." My mother looked at the drawing and began to cry. She didn't try to explain. She didn't ask for more time. The meeting ended exactly at 15 minutes. As they left, my mother said only one sentence. If someday you allow it, we'll learn how to be parents again. From the start. 1 month after that first meeting, I allowed a few more short visits between Harper and her grandparents, each one no longer than 30 minutes. Always in public, always with me present. What surprised me was that my parents, especially my mother, fully respected the boundaries I set. No guilt trips, no mention of money, no pushing for more time. They simply asked Harper about school, the painting she was working on, and her weekend piano class. My father often just sat quietly, but whenever Harper mentioned her dad, he nodded as if trying to remember every detail. I noticed he started bringing a small notebook, occasionally jotting down little stories Harper shared. At first, I thought it was just performative remorse. But after 5 visits, I began to feel that his silence wasn't as cold as it once was. In April, on Ben's birthday, I held a small memorial in the backyard. Harper hung up photos herself, and I set up a quiet corner where those who truly appreciated Ben could write a few words of remembrance. I hesitated for a long time before deciding to send an invitation to my parents. No emphasis, no disclaimers, just a simple note. If you come, please come with respect. That afternoon, I was surprised to see them arrive early. My mom wore a simple dress, no flashy jewelry like she usually did. My dad brought only a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. They brought no gifts, said no unnecessary words. They stood off to the side, not engaging with anyone. When their turn came, my mom wrote a short line on the memorial board. Ben taught me something none of my own children ever dared to say out loud. Love cannot be bought. One afternoon, Harper asked me, "If Grandma really changes, would you forgive her?" I placed my hand on her head, gently brushing her hair. Forgiveness isn't to make others feel better. It's so your own heart can breathe. Emery's story is a reminder that loss doesn't just bring pain. It reveals the true nature of those around us. When her trust was betrayed by her own blood, Emery chose to stand firm, draw clear boundaries, and protect her daughter with all the love and clarity she had. In real life, strength isn't always about forgiving quickly. It's about having the courage to say no to what's toxic, even when it comes from family.